Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Tires for Overlanding, where we discuss driving in sand and the dunes. So there's some things that we want to do to prepare for driving in the sand and the dunes. The first thing that we want to do is make sure that we've aired down our tires, because flotation is going to be critical when we're in these soft conditions. We also want to make sure that we've taken the time to take the heavy equipment, the heavy gear, and move it as low as possible in the vehicle and as far forward as possible in the vehicle. And then we want to make sure that everything we have inside the vehicle is lashed properly. Because the reality of driving in the sand dunes is there's a real possibility of either hitting a G out or coming off the lip of a dune with a little bit of air. All right, now that we've got everything lashed down, we want to make sure that we select the correct tire for driving in sand and in the dunes. And for a standard vehicle, you're going to want to go with an all-terrain tire. And that's because it's going to provide the maximum flotation and the least amount of disturbance of the silica, which is going to cause you to go down instead of forward. We also want to make sure that we're selecting the correct tire pressure, which means we're going to start off with that general rule of thumb of matching our tire pressure to the rim diameter, or half of the manufactured recommended tire pressure, whichever is greater. All right, so when we're selecting a tire for dune and sand driving, we want to look at something like this Hankook AT2 Extreme tire. And that's because it has a relatively dense tread pattern, and it also has lugs on the side of the tire. So as we air it down, we're going to get even better traction overall from a tire like this. Okay, so there's a few things that we want to think about when it comes to driving in dunes. Because we're driving basically on silica, the colder the air temperature, the more that the sand silica has compacted, the tighter the silica is together. The hotter the air temperature gets, the more space is created between the silica and the more likely you are to get stuck. So a cool morning is going to give you your best chance. But we also need to be aware of the fact that there are windward and leeward sides of the dune. The windward side of the dune, which would be with the coming from the prevailing wind direction, is going to have a lot more compaction. So you're going to see those ripples in the surface because the silica has actually been compacted by the wind and kind of keyed together to provide additional support. Whereas the leeward side of a dune, where the sand has blown over and softly fallen into place without that structure, is going to be much more difficult to climb. We can see how soft this sand is as it pours through my fingers, and that's why it's so difficult to drive in dunes.
All right, so we're driving in the sand dunes, which is so much fun. Like right now, we're getting ready to go down this huge drop off, and we can actually even almost come to a stop as we're coming down. And then we got a really sharp edge on the other side. So we got to build up some momentum because we have a really long climb. But you don't want to build up that momentum when you're starting to go downhill because you have the chance of really augering your car in. And then we've got a really big climb that we can actually play around with. And this is when you can kind of take advantage of that high marking opportunity where you can really work yourself up high on the dune. And these throttle inputs are going to be relatively smooth, but what we really want to be smooth with is our steering inputs. We want to have those smooth driver inputs. We want to make sure that our steering input isn't too tight like I'm doing now. It's a little bit harder on the vehicle, but if we time it right, then we can make sure that we can climb the slope. So we want to maintain a little bit of momentum coming up the slope, and then as we get towards the top, we're going to back off so that way we can make sure we can see what's on the other side. And then we're going to put those light steering inputs in there again. And when it comes to slowing down, you don't really need to use the brake much because there's so much resistance in the sand. pile of sand starts to build up in front of the tire. And if you do put on the brakes very hard, it'll actually dig the front end down. You can even get stuck on a little bit of a downslope. So a lot of it is just those very gentle driver inputs, low tire pressure, light throttle, but maintain momentum when you need to.
Overall, driving in sand in the dunes is a lot of fun, but we need to be mindful of our speed to prevent damage or accidents. This is also true when driving on the beach, where sand conditions can change rapidly and result in getting stuck near the high tide mark. It is also important to wash off the undercarriage after driving on the beach to prevent corrosion. Airing down and being gentle with driver inputs will make for the best success in sand.